This video is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to be breaking down one of my own tracks called the Arrangement. It's a new track, it just came out, and I thought it'd be a great way to showcase some of the things that I did in this track because it does have quite a few unique sounds and techniques that I use. I usually would only do these types of videos for my patrons, which you can sign up for in the link in the description below. I wanted to do this as a public video to see if you like this style of content, and if you do, then I will do more videos like this one. So show me that you like this video, comment and like, and I will do more like this. Otherwise, I'll just save it for supporters on my Patreon. So this track is a bit of a bridge between like melodic house and techno and progressive house. It's deep and it's pretty melodic, but it has a bit of an edgy side to it. And to be honest, I wasn't going to release this until I found a label that I really wanted to release it on. So I really appreciate Afterglow, the label that took on this track. If you want to download or stream the track, click the link in the description below. Starting off with the kick, I have two layers of my kick. This nice top end and that nice juicy bottom end. Together they sound like this. The kick sounds kind of unique, but it actually works really well in the context of the track, and it punches through the mix really well. Moving on to the bass elements, I just have a track spacer on the overall bass, and that is just a sidechain compressor specific to frequencies. And that is my kick compressing the sub frequencies out of the way of the bass. There's actually 5 layers to this bass, and it sounds much more complicated than it is. Once I break them down, it'll be a little bit easier to digest. This is just like a one-shot bass up here, something I made then recorded. I have the main bass line here. So you'll notice that there's lower velocities here, and that is actually controlling the cutoff of the bass pluck. Lower velocities will actually have lower cutoff, and they will sound a bit more damp and not so aggressive. And this just makes the bass line feel a bit more dynamic and professional. Looking at the actual preset, it is Ampology 2, and I've just tweaked it to be more fitting to the track. So this is a Serum preset that comes with Serum. I've actually duplicated this patch multiple times throughout the track. Even though it's using the same foundation of sound, they're still different enough that they don't sound like the same preset, but they feel kind of together. The next Serum, same thing, just with a different amount of maybe cutoff, and the velocity is a little bit different. And the MIDI looks like this. Really different than the original bass line. Another layer here is the same thing, the Ampology, but again, it's a little bit different. And with this one, I'm using this filter here to open up that sound, and it just makes it very unique. So even though these are all the same preset, they're used in completely different ways. They have a similar timbre, but they all are used differently and sound like completely different layers. Last, I have a duplicate of this Serum. Same kind of idea, taking up that filter. It's a very aggressive hit, but when I filter it in like this, it sounds like these nice guttural background noises that just fill up the spectrum. Now that you've heard all the different layers, it'll be easier to understand what they actually sound like together. Moving on to the drums, I have an auto filter, which is used later in the track for the breakdown, and then this loop compressor just to kind of squeeze everything together a little bit. Shaker loop, pretty self-explanatory. Just an audio loop that I grabbed. One hat, second hat, third, and all together these sound really nice and swingy. They carry a nice energy. This clap is a really, really nice clap in my opinion. It just sounds so good in the drum loop, and especially with the kick, complements it very well. The tambourines, more shakers. A percussion loop. Bongos, just these little one-shots. And I'll skip this one. I'll go to this kind of percussive sound here. And then there's this whip. A lot of percussion sounds going on, but the really, really interesting one is this bell. And I was really happy to put this in the track because it adds this groove and swing that's really interesting and really cool. And to make this, I actually took this bell percussion. I cut off the transient. It's not so aggressive. And then I just actually duplicated this, reversed it, and then consolidated it. And then I came up with this. And then inside this, I just adjusted the warp points so that it was perfectly matched in with the timing of the track. And this is what I got. And it just sounds so cool with the kick. Just adds such a cool groove, and I absolutely love that. By the way, now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you haven't already. Moving on to the synths, I have quite a few synths that are adding a lot of atmosphere. So this one here, very simple pluck, cutting off a little bit of the top end, a lot of the low end is being cut out. Using that same preset, just in a different way, and then just using a replica and reverb to just make this more of an atmospheric sound. This pad from Pigment is called Minor Comb. I don't know if I've tweaked all of these presets, but a lot of the time what I'll do is I will find a nice preset, I will tweak it to my liking, or I'll use it as is and just run with it. There's nothing wrong with using presets as long as you're not relying on them to write your music all the way through. Some of these presets are great for adding atmospheres and pads, so I will absolutely use them for things like that. And then I've actually just left a little bit of empty space in between the notes, and then it kind of quiets down in volume. Kind of like a throbbing of that sound, which I thought was really neat. Another Pigments here, it's the same preset, I've just tweaked it a little bit differently and added less reverb onto it. Another atmospheric sound. A lot of these atmospheric sounds are great just for carrying the track along and filling up some of the empty gaps. Here I have two, so I have this Pigments with less distortion, and then I have one with a lot of distortion. But what's interesting about this is I'm filtering out the high end first. Let me turn off the reverb and delay. And then I'm using a Camel Crusher on top of that to add my own sort of high-end harmonics. It's like bit crushed and distorted, and it sounds really grimy, which is not what you'd expect from a pad. The replica and the reverb also soften it up. And it just gives that kind of edgy, gritty vibe that you wouldn't expect from a pad. I've resampled another pad here, like this drone type pad, and the auto filter is moving back and forth with a very, very thin bell curve. With the LFO on, it's actually going back and forth. So you can't see it, but it's going like this. And that's because of this LFO here. And that's just creating some movement in the pad. And then Realm is a reverb plugin. An effect hit here. This instrument here. And once I start to bring in the actual lead here, which is what I'll cover last, I'll just show you really quickly that there's some effects here with some delays and reverbs, just basic risers and stuff. But the lead here is the bread and butter of the track. It's a preset called Crushed Melody, and then it's actually using just this fifth here, the G to the C. So it's using part of the sequence, and then I'm also changing the notes inside the MIDI as well. And then I'm expressing this with a bunch of different octaves the further down the line it plays, which gives it this huge atmospheric sound. Let me just open this up for you. Lots of different velocities here, which is giving it a different expression as well. Sounds super cool. So to get this, I'm using a lot of reverb and delay, and then I'm using Camel Crusher to distort it even more. And then on the second layer, it's much more of a stereo image, but inside the actual Pigments, it's also using a bit crusher in the effects. The bit crusher with some more delay and reverb. It's a huge sound with multiple layers of reverb and delay, but all very subtle. It's a great sounding synth. It sounds really edgy. And that's how I got the sound to be so crispy, is by using a couple different distortions and a couple layers of reverb. For the arrangement, I've built it slowly, adding in some pads and things as the track is building, just always progressing, always getting bigger. And then for the final climax of the track, just taken out everything except for here. When you break it down, it's just a few different layers all fitting together and doing their own sort of thing that really makes the track feel super complex and professional. Thanks for watching. Like I said, if you want more of these videos, like the video and comment below that you want me to cover more of these. If you want to listen to the track, click